so far to harbor life. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand.
Well, I guess it's that time again. It's time for us to take a little journey. So, first, flag down a tuk-tuk. Now hold on tight as we drive down to central Bangkok. We may need to stop and ask the local kathoey for directions. They'll lead us to whatever part of the Golden Triangle is nearby, and that's where we'll find him. Surrounded by illicit substances and Thai ladyboys, rolling in a pile of cash from his brain-dead followers, we will find Eric Dubay. Eric Dubay. If you don't already know how I feel about this dude, boy are you in for a surprise. Am I past the 1 minute mark? Can I swear yet?
Go back! I want to be monkey!
So, Eric Dubay is a fucking loser. I don't know of many people I would legitimately be happy to hear about the demise of, but he's among them. Aside from his cult status due to being one of the first fucking idiots to go on YouTube and say fucking idiotic things like the fucking earth is flat, he is a complete nobody. He has no talent, no presentation skills, no ability to think on his feet, which is why he has never debated anyone live, ever, no ability to learn and improve. He's extremely censorious with comments on his channel. Wait, am I just describing every flat earther? Well, he's also a fucking Nazi. No, this is not a Twitter-style exaggeration, he's actually a fucking Nazi.
So Paul Michael Bales made a diss track about me. Him and Neil deGrasse Tyson think they can rap now.
Stop it. Get some help.
The Earth's fucking flat, Holocaust denied. Hitler was cool and not a bad guy.
Stop it.
So yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say I absolutely hate Eric Dubay. So if I seem a little salty during this video, you now know why. Eric narrated a new film. I say film, but it doesn't really qualify. It's a just under 60-minute typical FE video with slightly better production value. Now, Dubay didn't make the film. He doesn't have the ability to do that. Barely has the ability to write a fucking book. But his name is all over it, his nasally little bitch boy voice is all over it, and he's the one promoting it. The actual film, and just imagine I'm using air quotes every time I say that word, was made by Hibbler Productions, who are nobody of note, and was directed by Sean Hibbler, who has made... oh. Nothing. At all. Great start. So I'm gonna do a review of this film, but not in my usual method. Ordinarily, I'd play the video for about 30 seconds, then spend an equal or greater amount of time responding to each clip. However, it's an hour long, which for a film is fucking pathetic. You've had 6 years and you idiots still can't make it to feature length, and I'm not making a 2-hour video. Instead, I'm gonna put on my film critic hat and review it that way. Of course, underneath the critic hat is my debunking hat, so I'll do that too, but here's the problem. The entire film is a prat. From start to finish, there is not a single new argument. Flat Earthers don't learn, so despite this being a brand new project, there is zero new information contained within it. Instead, we'll have a prat counter. Every time the film makes a point that has been debunked 1,000 times over, we'll add it to the counter. Otherwise, we're going to look at this as a movie. And spoiler alert, it's a fucking bad movie. It begins with a crappy CGI render from space, while Eric babbles in his typical manner, asking the audience if they think it's real. He then adds a NASA logo and asks again. Of course, the problem is, nobody with a brain would believe it is real. Aside from CGI's tendency to look to the human eye suspiciously like CGI, it's got a number of obvious flaws. The lighting on the Earth isn't consistent with the angle of the sun, and that's the least of its problems. The camera appears to be moving away at nearly the speed of light, based on the speed at which the Earth is receding away from the viewer. Additionally, it's in a place that doesn't make sense. It would need to be in a polar, eccentric orbit that moves from low Earth orbit to somewhere just below geosynchronous altitudes, and anyone who knows satellites knows that this orbit doesn't really exist. When you see the Earth from space, you're either at ISS altitude, a mere 400 kilometers up, or you're up so high that you orbit with the same speed the Earth rotates. Eccentric orbits like the one depicted sort of exist. It's called a tundra orbit or a Molniya orbit, and they're designed to keep the satellite roughly over the same area for long periods of time while the Earth rotates beneath it, allowing for proper examination of high latitudes. However, with those orbits, the satellite slows down dramatically as it approaches its apogee, meaning you wouldn't get anywhere near this kind of view. So, after erroneously thinking that people can't tell obvious CGI when they see it, Eric switches tacks, and this is when he makes the first Pratt.
Let's try this another way.
Breaking news. NASA finally did it. They finally did it. They're finally live streaming the Earth spinning from outer space. The world is celebrating. This one will go down in history.
Yeah, that already happened, Eric. It wasn't even NASA or any other government agency that did it. It was a fucking satellite TV company called Dish. They had a channel called Dish Earth that showed the entire Earth from 22,300 miles up in 2009, 6 years before Dubay ever even appeared on the internet. It's gone now for two reasons. First, the camera failed. Second, nobody was watching it, so they didn't bother launching a new camera. Flat Earthers were given exactly what they wanted, and it was so unpopular that it was cancelled. What does that tell you? The film then plays its opening credits sequence, listing off the many idiots they got to appear in this moronic project to the tune of dramatic orchestral trailer song number 4295. The director also failed at the opening credits. While he did get one thing correct, the director's name is generally the last credited name, he missed literally everyone else. He lists the guests and then himself. No editor, no producer, no music composer, no DP, no production designer, no writer, probably because it's all him and he was embarrassed to admit that he doesn't have any crew whatsoever. The film then opens properly by talking about the heyday of YouTube conspiracy theories, 2015 to 2017. The time when YouTube didn't seem to care what they allowed on their platform as long as it wasn't porn or gore. I'll admit, those were good times, but I'm waiting for when the film pulls the oppression card and starts talking about how they're being censored now. You know it's coming. It then shifts dramatically to an interview with ODD TV, and I just want to point out this is very poor pacing. You were on one track, then you shifted to another without any warning or proper segue. Then we get to the second, third, and fourth Pratt from ODD.
There has never been one experiment that proves that the Earth is in motion. When you try to find the curvature of the Earth, it's nowhere to be found. Unless you're looking at footage from GoPro cameras that have fisheye lenses, Hollywood movies, or NASA propaganda.
And they were using these cameras that didn't have those. The horizon rose to eye level, which would be impossible on a ball that would be falling away from you as you rose up.
Eric then claims that Google began making jokes about FE because they were panicking about their platform accidentally hosting the truth, and claims that they were bringing in puppets to shoot down Flat Earth. They then show a montage of TV shows mocking Flat Earth.
The Earth being flat is getting out of control. Can you please help?
When you stand on the shoulders of those who came before, you might just see far enough to realize the Earth isn't flat.
1 + 1 is?
2.
What color is the sky?
Blue.
And the Earth is?
Round. Second is here.
This float celebrates flat Earth theory that is spreading ironically around the
World and its possible roundness.
Spinning. Now they are talking about it.
First of all, nobody who's seen Flat Earth videos on YouTube then turns on their archaic television to see responses on syndicated cable. Legacy media is dying, Eric. Nobody cares what they have to say. Ironically, the film doesn't show a single clip of actual Flat Earth debunking. You don't see Simon Dan, you don't see Professor Dave, you don't see Fight the Flat Earth, and you don't see me. Instead, you see ABC News. Who the fuck watches ABC News? Pratt number 5 appears, again out of nowhere, in the middle of this rant about controlled opposition.
Nothing. Nothing that any of us would show you. Like here, have you ever seen a time lapse of the sun? Does it look like the Earth is rotating backwards and the sun is still? Or does it look like our sun is simply moving across our sky?
Next, the film introduces allegedly Dave, but doesn't mention that Dave drinks his own piss. Probably because that would make him seem crazy, wouldn't it? Dave immediately commits the next prat, and he's backed up by Eric.
That proves that these crepuscular rays, as they're called, can only be recreated with a light source that is small and close.
It doesn't take a genius to understand that the further the light source goes up, the more the sun rays would spread out and become parallel. The reason you'd even think that the sun...
If the Earth was flat, wouldn't it be sunny all the time? I mean, have they ever even thought about it?
Well, if you'd let me finish, the reason you'd even think the sun would be visible from anywhere on Earth is because of the images they have shown you. No one promoting this stands for truth. You can keep believing in your fantasy gas ball.
Shut up, bitch!
So, aside from the whole crepuscular rays thing being debunked with the simple existence of anti-crepuscular rays, I just wanted to point out how fucking cringe that was. Eric trying to be a tough guy with that whiny, nasally voice is so pathetic, especially when we know that he has run away from every single live discussion that has ever been offered to him. Again, note that he showed some sort of comical response video, and not any kind of scientific response to Flat Earth. I wonder why. Dave babbles for a while about how the local sun works, except it doesn't, and I already showed why. No angular change in size when you remove the glare caused by your eyes. End of. Let's get away from the sun now, because every sunset that has ever happened debunks everything Flat Earth has to say about it. The next prat, at least properly segued this time, is cold moonlight, which is debunked by standing under a tree during a cool day. Radiated cooling. It exists. Look it up. Next, they do the stars through the moon bit, which is funny because the clips they show look like satellites to me, the existence of which debunk Flat Earth entirely. Of course, after bringing up the moon, the next logical step is Apollo hoaxes. Watch that prat counter, folks.
People actually believe they walked on the moon, talked with Nixon, played golf, drove a car, and planted a flag.
If you really believe that Neil Armstrong took the first step, then why do you give any credit to the cameraman already there waiting for him?
From here we move on to some dude, a tattoo artist named Johnny Giampapa, who I've never heard of, but he makes yet another prat while he's on.
If NASA was legit, literally all they would have to do is one thing. Take one of their satellites, zoom in on someone in Australia, upside down, driving a car.
Wait, sorry, two prats.
We have the footage of them in the space capsule, still in Earth orbit, covering up a small section of the window, so you can see through the circle and making that look like that was the Earth. And this is a joke.
He stole this from Bart Sibrel. You know, the guy who Buzz Aldrin punched in the face?
Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I
Will you
misrepresented
get
myself.
away from me?
You're a coward and a liar and a thief. And a thief. And a thief.
Bart's claim is debunked by simply watching the rest of the footage in which the craft rotates in the same Earth, which shows weather patterns that match the global weather on that date, appears in the opposite window. He then quotes Don Pettit's famous line about returning to the moon, and I have something controversial to say here.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
Don Pettit, astronaut and engineer, is wrong. I know, who am I to say that, but he is. It wasn't destroyed. I mean, it was mostly single-use anyway, so it was destroyed during the missions, but the more correct term is decommissioned. The Apollo project was over, so NASA no longer had a use for the Apollo machinery. It wasn't destroyed, though. A lot of it still exists, as do all the blueprints. Over time, due to a lack of funding and any kind of reason for a return mission, it became obsolete. Yes, a rocket capable of going to the moon is obsolete. Why? None of its parts can be made in modern factories anymore, its computers are completely incompatible with modern ones, and NASA would never get permission to launch such a potentially unsafe launch system in modern times, especially not after killing 14 people with their most controversial program. Don is a very smart man, but he's a scientist, not a public speaker. Hence, he sometimes doesn't say the right thing so that the average plebs can understand it. It's actually less his fault and more the fault of those who misunderstand him. Tattoo Guy's segment ends with typical incredulity. People actually believe the Earth is spinning 1,000 miles, shut the fuck up. And yet another prat about bubbles in space, which is debunked by showing the astronaut training pool next to the alleged space bubbles. While showing Scott Kelly being harassed by idiots, they show a number of stage separations that have particles floating around, as though to imply these are also space bubbles. Quick question. When there's no human beings in frame, why the fuck would you see air bubbles? Air bubbles come from people breathing air, so there would be no purpose for these bubbles to exist in footage that you guys claim is all CGI anyway. As flat earthers always say, do your own research and ask important questions. Think about what everyone tells you and ask yourself, does that make sense? Next prat, the zero-G plane claim, debunked by any ISS footage that lasts longer than 45 seconds. So after doing the usual green screens and harnesses BS, they do a bit in which they claim NASA admits to faking everything, using clips where astronauts state they can only fly in low Earth orbit, which at the time was true for manned spaceflight. However, orbits don't happen on a flat Earth. Orbits require horizontal velocity and drop due to gravity that match the curve of the Earth. They don't work on magical snow globes. So NASA admitting to fakery is actually just a true statement that still disproves flat Earth. I'd also like to point out that this dude they hired to pretend to be a NASA spokesperson couldn't even memorize the 30 seconds of lines he had.
This will be divided evenly between the citizens of America, as well as rebuilding poverty-stricken towns and cities.
Who I can force my political bias and influence on fellow politicians.
Isn't that corrupt?
The next guest appearance is Eddie Bravo. Eddie Bravo is a moron who doesn't know anything about anything except mixed martial arts. He then demands photos of Earth from space and not CGI, but we already know he wouldn't believe them anyway because he's already done it. Eric then quickly interjects to talk about how the famous Earth-Moon image from the Discover satellite is obviously fake because green line. This is debunked by basic knowledge of how RGB photos are taken. They're taken in layers. Green is the last layer, and by the time the photo was taken, the moon had moved a little. Next. So, after Eddie demands evidence that already exists, we move on to gravity. The second Eric says this,
long before the theory of gravity was a glimmer in Newton's imagination,
he's already wrong. Newton didn't create the theory of gravity. He created the mathematical law of gravitational attraction. I'm not going to move on to Eric's ramblings about density and buoyancy, because this is the equation for buoyancy. Guess what the G stands for?
Gravity, you fucking retard! Gravity! Have you ever heard of fucking gravity? Gravity! Gravity!
Next, we need to address something specific.
All our space information is coming from NASA. Wernher von Braun was the director of all 6 moon missions, and he's a Is that not a comic book?
Guess what, Eddie? The guy you interviewed on your own show, who is narrating this sorry excuse for a film, is a fucking Nazi. At least von Braun ran when he saw the chance. Dubay actively supports the Third Reich to this fucking day. Actually eat shit, Eddie Bravo. I hope you die. In Minecraft. I hope you dig straight down into lava. Next is a way too long segment, styled like a comic book, in which the film imagines that von Braun left Nazi Germany to join Operation Paperclip. In fact, he entered the operation after the war ended, and Nazi Germany was no more. It also mentions von Braun using airplane models as his basis for rocketry. No, rockets were his basis for rocketry. The V-2 rocket, to be specific. He just took the warhead off and mounted a bunch of scientific instruments on it instead. These morons can't even get actual history correct. Our new guest is Santos Bonacci, who is apparently an astrotheologist. That sounds like a legit profession. Hey, why did my word processor put a red line under that? Santos bitches that all space images are CGI because, look at it, it's obviously CGI. He also contradicts himself by first stating that heliocentrism and evolution are godless theories, and then admits that heliocentrism was first proposed by Jesuit priests.
Everything according to their bogus Darwinian theory of evolution, all of it points to a godless, atheist, demonic, demon-crat lie, which the Jesuits invented in 1542.
While Santos continues to babble, the film shows some out-of-focus stars and tries to tell the audience, this is what the planets really look like, a notion long debunked by every real astrophotographer who has ever existed. Hey IB Hunter. Hey Geistview. Hey other astrophotographers who watch my channel. He also states that stars never move or change luminosity. I raise him precession and supernovas. He continues to gish gallop for several more minutes, but there's nothing worth addressing. Suddenly, ODD TV is back, quoting the wrong 8 inches per mile squared formula, another Pratt, then doing the boats don't disappear 'cause zoom lenses. I think ODD has the record for the most Pratts in this video. He also has the balls to say people are afraid to debate flat earthers. But if you follow this community regularly, you know for a fact that there are always people willing to debate these idiots, and they are always the ones who are the first to run away. It happens so often we made an entire term for it. #bitchmade. Next is a collection of pilots, quote, admitting the Earth is flat. One is clearly trolling, and the others are stating facts that don't have anything to do with the shape of the Earth.
Did you notice any curvature while we were up there?
No.
No? What'd you see while we were up there?
Just the blue sky.
I was reading a lot of stuff on the flat Earth.
Okay, yeah. True.
That's true?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, cool.
All right.
God bless, brother.
Did you notice any curvature while we were up there?
Curvature? No.
No? There's no curvature?
It's just all flat.
Then we get the government documents that admit the Earth is flat, which are all taken out of context as they're talking about assumptions made in simulations. Hell, one of them says we assume the aircraft is rigid and the Earth is flat. Eric, you've been on planes. They're not rigid, you retard. Still with the schizophrenic pacing and editing, Eric next goes to satellites actually being balloons. While high-altitude balloons exist, they don't debunk the existence of satellites. Especially since you can't really steer a balloon. GPS networks could not exist with balloons. Within a week, everything would be blown out of position and the entire system would be out of sync. Moving on. With 10 minutes left in the film, we move on to Antarctica. Some dude in a cowboy hat starts talking about how you're not allowed to travel to Antarctica because it's actually the ice wall. Problem is, you can go to Antarctica. There's nothing stopping you. The film closes with an attack on Neil deGrasse Tyson. After their usual complaints about the things he's said and they've failed to understand, we get a demand that Tyson debate Dubay. They claim he flip-flopped on his claim that he would debate Dubay, but never once show a clip of Tyson agreeing to the debate. You know why? It never fucking happened. Tyson never agreed. And meanwhile, Eric can't get off his lazy ass to debate anyone, ever, let alone Tyson. The last thing we see before the credits is the most cringe shit I've ever seen.
What happened? I'll tell you what happened. Someone at NASA told Neil, we're not going to let you go head-to-head with Eric Dubay because he'll make you look foolish. Prove me wrong.
Eric, we've all asked you for a chance to prove you wrong, but you run away every time. If you're not willing to debate, say, Professor Dave or MC Toon, hell, debate me. How in the fuck are we supposed to believe you'd show up to debate Neil deGrasse Tyson? You'd be #bitchmade and you know it. So, Is Level a good film? No. It's not even a film. It's every FE video condensed together into one. It has no sense of direction, no pacing, swishes subjects constantly without warning, is filled with deceptive editing, and has no overall message besides Earth flat 'cause some Nazi in Thailand says so. Go fuck yourself, Eric. Dig straight down into lava. Or debate me. Whichever you want, pussy. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more, please subscribe and turn on the bell for notifications. If you want to support me further, consider becoming a member or a patron, or checking out my merch or my Amazon links. Thank you, and I will see you over the curve, Space Cowboys.
In a vast cosmic arena. Our imagined self-importance